It certainly had one heck of an impact. Our investigation, released this morning into colossal waste at online retailer Amazon, has been trending online in the UK and America. And that's no surprise. Pretty much everyone, including the Prime Minister, has been shocked by our findings.
Our target was approximately 130,000 items a week.
The target to destroy from one centre was 130,000 items.
Yes.
Well, it sounds incredible to me, and an indictment of a consumerist society if it's as you say.
Also on News at 10 tonight. Freedom if you are double jabbed, probably, or at least perhaps. But when? No, no, no. Iran's new hardline president makes it very clear there will be no change at all. Earth on the edge. Emma reports from Nevada on the continuing impact of climate change in America.
Enough water is lost every week from here to fill 15,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
On the eve of crucial games, both England and Scotland wrestle with COVID fallout, and roaming the rocks near the White Cliffs of Dover, the dinosaur prints that are a mere 110 million years old.
It would have been a very busy place. No ice cream vans, no deck chairs, but lots and lots of dinosaurs.
This is ITV News at 10 with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. Our exclusive investigation into the mountain of goods sent for destruction every week by the online retail giant Amazon is tonight provoking a massive reaction. Our findings have been trending on both sides of the Atlantic. Here, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson didn't mince his words, calling it an indictment of consumerist society, which he pledged the government would look into straight away. His voice has been joined by many others. Greenpeace called it shocking. The investigation, which centred on one of Amazon's huge Scottish warehouses, revealed that millions, yes, millions of unsold or returned items are destroyed every year. These include luxury goods such as smart TVs, laptops and drones, many of which could be donated to charity. Amazon said in a statement it is working towards a goal of zero product disposal.
This is one of Amazon's biggest UK warehouses in Dunfermline, Scotland. And from inside where millions of perfectly good products each year are sent to be destroyed. Secret footage captured in what's known as the destruction zone, and that calls into question the company's environmental and ethical practices. An ITV News investigation reveals unsold laptops scanned not for delivery, but instead marked destroy. Boxes full of electrical items such as drills, shavers, headphones, even smart TVs. The list goes on. Brand new books still in their wrappers, or jewellery or steel cutlery with that same instruction: destroy. One former employee who wishes to remain anonymous reveals the scale of what they're asked to do.
So from a Friday to a Friday, our target was approximately 130,000 items a week.
The target to destroy from one centre was 130,000 items.
Yes.
And how did that make you feel when you knew that?
I gasped. There's no rhyme or reason to what gets destroyed. Dyson fans, Hoovers, the occasional MacBook or iPad. Or the other day, 20 bins filled with thousands of COVID masks still in their plastic wrappers. Overall, I'd say 50% of all items seem to be unopened and still in their shrink wrap. The other half are returns, but in good condition.
Undercover filming shows a manager's spreadsheet from April at the Dunfermline depot. 124,000 items to destroy that week. Now, Amazon does donate to charity, but over the same period, that figure was just 27,000. Suppliers who sell their goods through Amazon often store them in their warehouses. The longer they're unsold, the higher the charges, until it becomes uneconomical. For international vendors, it's often more expensive to get the products sent back than be disposed of. So they're often loaded onto pallets, again marked destroy, before heading out on lorries that we tracked to see where they went. Well, we followed this lorry from the Amazon fulfillment centre with those items marked electrical destroy, and this is where it is going to a waste management centre around an hour away. Behind the tarpaulin, the huge amount of unwanted goods are revealed. We watched as the pallets were removed one by one. Several such loads can leave the depot every day. Separately, we followed another lorry as it headed out, carrying non-electrical items. The destination, a landfill and recycling site, only a few miles from where they'd been stored, and in the main, still perfectly usable. Recently, Amazon's UK boss, who at the time was not aware of our investigation, did admit this to us.
So how much of the stock in your warehouses ends up being destroyed?
I'm afraid I don't have
Is it very much?
that number with me. It will be extremely small.
We showed our findings to the environmental campaigners, Greenpeace.
It's just an unimaginable amount of unnecessary waste. Each of these items requires natural resources and carbon emissions and human labour to make. That is why, as long as Amazon's business model relies on this kind of disposal culture, they're just going to expand, things are only going to get worse.
And now the Prime Minister is promising to investigate.
Well, it sounds incredible to me, and an indictment of a consumerist society. If it's as you say, we'll look into it. Obviously, we don't like stuff going to landfill under any circumstances.
Come November, the UK will host the largest ever climate conference in Glasgow, just 40 miles over the water there. Both countries and companies have much to work on.
And Richard is here now. Look, I mean, the scale of it is just off the wall, incredible. And there's been an extraordinary reaction to this piece across the wicket.
Well, there has. I mean, even aside from the Prime Minister, who clearly wants to show some climate leadership ahead of all the United Nations Great and Good coming here this autumn. Also from Westminster tonight, the head of the Environmental Audit Committee, Philip Dunn's been very strong. He said this business model looks to have completely lost control of its environmental impact. And Labour's Deputy Leader, Angela Rayner, said a personal plea if you want. She said, I'll call on Amazon to donate any spare items to children and I'll help them personally deliver that. There, I think she's referring to the laptops that we saw that were missing during the pandemic, where children just didn't have them, and hoping to help with that. Amazon have come to us tonight. They've also left us with a statement. They say that we are working towards a goal of zero product disposal, and our priority is to resell, donate to charitable organisations or recycle any unsold products. No items are sent to landfill in the UK. As a last resort, we will send items to energy recovery. Now, it's important to say that the world's biggest online retailer isn't doing anything illegal. The fact is actually that we all need to look at ourselves a bit more about how we behave, because in the UK, we're the biggest producer of electronic waste, because you and everyone else buy more, and they buy it more often. Ironically, we still follow the EU's laws where it comes to waste, so I think we'd be better off perhaps following somewhere like France, where a law has been passed that it's now illegal to send unsold non-food products to waste. It's about redistribution.
OK, Richard, well, it was a fascinating investigation. Thank you very much for now. OK, let's move on to other news now. And today was, of course, meant to be the day when everyone was released from the shackles of the COVID restrictions. Well, we all know what happened to that, and there's no sense in going over it again. But the big question tonight, here and now, on June the 21st, is what are the chances of everyone getting their lives back in a month's time? Well, the Prime Minister did say that the new date of July the 19th is still looking good. And to that end, there has been a huge drive to get as many people as possible fully vaccinated by then. But when it comes to travel, the great perhaps, maybe, probably, can but shouldn't but can, maybe, possibly, who on earth knows issue of our times, it was another day of very possibly not.
If the final unlocking had happened, there would have been quite a party at Heaven nightclub last night, but it didn't.
And at midnight, there was no removal of the tables, there was no removal of the chairs, there was no removal of social distancing.
The owner is open to some kind of vaccine passports, so long as they're government regulated.
Do you think knowing your customers had 2 vaccinations would help you in reopening here?
It's very hard, for example, when they put in a guideline, and it's a guideline, because customers won't listen to you. It really needs to be strict rules.
And today the Prime Minister confirmed that from self-isolation to travel quarantine, the rules could potentially be changed for the fully vaccinated.
I think it's very important that we look at the opportunities for all of us over the coming months from 2 jabs. We're one of the most vaccinated countries in the world now.
Nearly 60% of adults have had 2 jabs and more than 80% have had 1. Amongst today's recipients, travel is a big motivator.
Oh, God, I've been waiting so long. I've cancelled so many holidays. So as soon as I can go, I will be going.
It'd be nice to eventually travel to see my family again.
I just want to be sat on the beach, Spain. Yeah, really want to go on holiday.
But the virus is taking off too. Another 10,500 cases were reported across the UK today. And it's the situation in hospitals that's key. In England, the total number of COVID patients is up almost 30% week on week, and the number on ventilators is up almost 25%.
We're still in the grips of a very unforgiving Delta variant with quite difficult data in terms of rising cases, rising hospitalisations.
Which is perhaps why, despite all the speculation, the numbers limit on weddings is the only significant relaxation that has actually come into force today. Carl Dinnan, News at 10.
Now, the COVID crisis has seen a new policy mantra adopted by virtually everyone in government from the Prime Minister down. Follow the science has been the phrase behind virtually every step in combating the virus. Lockdowns, the tier system, vaccines, travel restrictions, all of it. Well, now in an exclusive interview with our science editor, Tom, Boris Johnson has declared his determination to learn from the pandemic. He wants to set up a new office to make sure future governments make the best use of science.
So each of those brown spots represents one particle of vaccine.
It's hard to think of a Prime Minister who spent more time in front of cameras wearing a white coat. But the pandemic, says Boris Johnson, has genuinely shifted his focus on science.
I think this is what they call a big teachable moment for us, for the world, for Britain. We've seen every day how science is changing our lives and making our lives better in the most practical way.
The Johnson government has pledged to double science spending by 2024, but Treasury is yet to stump up all the money. And that's before they've paid for a new science funding agency at a cost of $200 million a year.
That's the same you're proposing to spend on a royal yacht? Would it be a good idea maybe to cancel that, or possibly make the royal yacht a royal research vessel? How about that? That would please the scientists.
Let me remind you, we are already spending more than any time in the last 4 decades. But it's what we also want to see is the private sector coming in, venture capital coming in.
The Prime Minister clearly seems enthusiastic about this, but will a new cabinet committee really make a lasting difference?
It's fantastic to see the Prime Minister framing some of the big goals he wants to tackle today. But you need to balance that with making sure that the UK's academic and industrial science capability is really broad and really strong. And that will mean that the UK can pivot to whatever is the next big challenge that comes along.
The Prime Minister says his new cabinet-level Science and Technology Council, chaired by Patrick Vallance, will ensure science helps serve the nation's interests. But are his cabinet interested enough in science?
I think only 2 of the 25 ministers in cabinet have any science education.
I think the last...
Should this change? Doesn't that need to change?
I always wanted to be a scientist, but the trouble was that if the way the system works, if you're good at other things, then it's a very binary system in the UK. And I think Mrs. Thatcher was probably the last scientist to be Prime Minister. What we do need is, I think, a high level of scientific education, not just in government, but across the country.
The Prime Minister's new enthusiasm for science may have a lot to do with the pandemic, but questions loom about whether he listened to scientists at critical moments during it.
Do you have any regrets in terms of looking back at the pandemic about advice from your scientists you wish you'd maybe listened to earlier or acted upon earlier?
Well, I think there'll be plenty of time to look at that, but we followed the scientific advice throughout.
The answer to that question could do more to shape Boris Johnson's legacy than any of the post-COVID plans he's announced today. Tom Clark, News at 10.
Different kind of politics now, and it looks likely that Sir Geoffrey Donaldson will be elected unopposed as the next leader of the Democratic Unionist Party in Northern Ireland, following last week's sudden resignation of Edwin Poots. Sir Geoffrey, the MP for Lagan Valley, who's widely considered a moderate, confirmed today that he will run for the leadership. If elected, he would stand down from his parliamentary seat. It is thought he will get the support of Northern Ireland's current First Minister, Paul Givan. OK, the man elected to be Iran's new leader has long had a reputation as a hardliner. Well, today, Ebrahim Raisi made it crystal clear to the watching world that now he is Iran's president, he does not intend to soften his stance. A meeting with President Biden? No. Negotiating Tehran's ballistic missile program? Not going to happen. There was no response to allegations about his role in the execution of political prisoners back in 1988, though he did describe himself as a defender of human rights.
He had the look of a leader determined for the world to listen to his message. Iran's hardline president-elect Raisi spelling out his plans, calling for US sanctions to be lifted.
The US is obliged to lift all oppressive sanctions against the Iranian nation, as it has been emphasized in the present administration as well as the future administration. Removal of sanctions and its verification will be central to our foreign policy.
He was asked if he'd meet President Biden. His reply, an emphatic no. So what are the issues between Iran and the West? World leaders want the 2015 nuclear deal restored. It restricted Iran's nuclear development but was abandoned by the Trump administration. Controversial allies such as Syria and Hamas have congratulated Raisi on winning the election. There are also human rights concerns over the hardliner, especially given claims denied by Iran that Ebrahim Raisi was linked to mass executions in the late 1980s.
The day you were elected, Amnesty International said you should be investigated for crimes against humanity.
All actions I carried out during my office were always in the direction of defending human rights.
So I think in general we should expect an anti-American, economically nationalist tone that foreshadows increasing repression. But there could be policies of pragmatism designed to reduce tensions.
With Raisi's victory, Iran faces a new direction. Hardliners have silenced the voices of reform, with consequences which will be felt far and wide. Iran's president-elect has a clear message to the world beyond, that salvaging the nuclear deal won't come at any price. On this and other issues, Ebrahim Raisi's hardline approach is a challenge to the West. Neil Connery, News at 10, Tehran.
Well, for the latest in our series Earth on the Edge, we've been investigating the weather extremes in the USA that seem to get worse and worse each year. Well, this year is so far following this deadly trend. The US is being hit by extreme weather on both fronts. The eastern seaboard is being battered by Tropical Storm Claudette, already the third named storm of a hurricane season that has started early for a seventh year in a row. Meanwhile, the western states are bracing themselves for one of their worst ever summer heat waves. Temperatures are surging, reaching a blistering 53 degrees Celsius in California's Death Valley. That's 128 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat and lack of rainfall has led to unprecedented water shortages, including at America's reservoir, Lake Mead in Nevada, which powers the mighty Hoover Dam. And the probable reason for these temperature extremes is, say many experts, devastatingly simple: climate change.
This is it. This is the iconic Hoover Dam in all of its glory and wonderment.
It was built as a monument to America's ascendancy, providing power and water in a country hungry for both. Yet this triumph of engineering risks becoming a monument to the global tragedy of environmental change, as the reservoir which powers the Hoover Dam depletes.
We're in the 22nd year of drought in the Colorado River Basin. Lake Mead is at 35% capacity, and that means we have about 25% less ability to produce power.
Nature displays its distress well. The white band is the watermark, vividly showing what the level was and what it has fallen to. This reservoir, which supplies the dam and 25 million people, is now at an all-time low.
We will very likely be declaring shortage for the first time ever in the lower basin for the year 2022.
The electricity for 8 million Americans is produced by the Hoover Dam, this vast site powered by Lake Mead. To protect electrical output, a shortage declaration would reduce the water supply to homes and businesses.
People need to conserve water in every way that they can, in their homes, in their landscape.
Rising temperatures offer huge challenges to the lake and the dam. Drought and climate change are the major problems here, but this year's super high temperatures mean that evaporation has reached record levels too. Enough water is lost every week from here to fill 15,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And water pressure on a depleting supply. The dam provides power to Las Vegas, America's power-guzzling playground. It's the fastest warming city and in the driest state. With an expanding population and rising temperatures, conservation is all. Surprisingly, in terms of water at least, the Strip is not the problem. Almost all of it here is recycled.
Here's some water right here.
Wastage elsewhere is the real issue.
This is water waste. Water waste investigator 7158. I have water coming through a brick wall from the backyard.
Las Vegas is tackling that with round-the-clock patrols.
Leak. Oh yeah, look at this.
There are fines of up to $5,000 for water wastage. And I guess people would say this isn't a big deal, this is only a little bit of water.
But this is cumulative effect. If you take this whole complex, there's thousands of gallons of water that are going out that main gate there. And this water will go into the storm drain system. It'll evaporate before it even hits the lake. So that's where the waste is from this. This is not recoverable. I have a spray and flow situation.
These patrols are part of Las Vegas's attempt to protect the lake that so much of this city depends on. Water consumption is going down, but the lake is going down faster.
It's sad. Every drop counts.
A century ago, human ingenuity delivered a supply solution for America's West. Even greater ingenuity will be needed to ensure this wonder of the past has a place in the future. Emma Murphy, News at 10, Las Vegas.
OK, let's go on to some football now. And Scotland must be rueing their bad luck tonight after their chances at the European Championship suffered a big setback. A win against Croatia tomorrow could see them through to the knockout stages of a finals tournament for the first time. But they'll have to do it without one of their star performers, Billy Gilmour, who played so well, of course, against England on Friday. He's tested positive for COVID today.
Scotland's men may be one game away from making history and qualifying for the knockout stages of a major tournament, but at training this morning a star player was missing. Confined to his room is the young midfielder Billy Gilmour, required to self-isolate after testing positive for COVID-19.
He's announced himself on the world stage, and then the COVID gets hold of him, and yeah, it's difficult. I'm sure he's gutted, we're gutted, but we've got to move on. We've got a massive game tomorrow, and one we need to win.
Gilmour was the man of the match in Scotland's draw with England on Friday night, a performance which helped to keep alive Scotland's hopes of staying in the tournament. His positive test means he'll miss tomorrow's game against Croatia and, should Scotland go through, the next game in the last 16.
Protocols being followed, but Billy Gilmour's self-isolation is a terrible disappointment for him and for this tournament. A huge young talent missing out on a chance to represent his country when it really counts.
It just seems to be typical of Scotland. In the 23-year wait we've had to qualify for Europe, a new star appears and then he gets the dreaded COVID. So we're back to almost the square one. We will need a solid performance, and perhaps more than Billy Gilmour, we need somebody to score a goal or two.
Staging a football tournament in a pandemic was always going to be difficult. The need to control infection a priority over players' ambitions and fans' hopes. Geraint Vincent, News at 10, Glasgow.
Well, without kicking a ball, England learned tonight they will definitely qualify for the last 16 of the Euros. Defeats for Finland and Russia mean even if England finish third in their group, they will still go through. But their preparations for tomorrow's match against the Czech Republic were also disrupted by COVID, with 2 players having to self-isolate after coming into contact, as you just saw there, with Scotland's Billy Gilmour.
The whole England squad may have tested negative, but tonight, as a precaution, both Mason Mount and Ben Chilwell are isolating after close contact with Billy Gilmour. An unwanted headache for Gareth Southgate as he approaches such an important game.
We have to accept we're in the situation we are, and we're abiding by all of the regulations, and at the moment that's why the 2 boys are having to isolate until we have more information and confirmation of where we stand.
The fans were unimpressed by England last time out. More urgency and more adventure is what they're calling for.
If you look at the Scotland game, they were very, very compact and very, very good at closing off gaps. But if you manage to break them down, you've got to do it very, very quickly. And I don't think we did that.
A win tomorrow and England will likely face France, Germany or Portugal at Wembley on Tuesday week. A draw means either Spain, Poland, Sweden or Slovakia in Copenhagen. If they lose, because of tonight's results, they still qualify, but that match will not be at Wembley. After their showing against Scotland, England have slipped down the bookies' list of likely champions, but they are still favourites to top the group, and a convincing win against the Czech Republic would no doubt see expectations rocket once again. But after tonight's COVID scare, even Gareth Southgate doesn't yet know whether or not he'll have a full squad to choose from. Steve Scott, ITV News, Wembley.
And you can watch England's game against the Czech Republic with my colleague Mark Pugac tomorrow at 8 p.m. on ITV. Scotland's game versus Croatia is on at the same time on ITV4 and STV. Now, a New Zealand weightlifter is set to make history after being confirmed as the first transgender athlete to compete at the Olympics. Laurel Hubbard has been selected to represent New Zealand's women's team at the delayed Tokyo 2020 Games. Qualifying requirements have recently been modified to allow transgender athletes to compete. And finally, the discovery of fossilised footprints along the Kentish shoreline has opened up an extraordinary picture of what these holiday beaches looked like 110 million years ago. Roaming the sands close to what are now known as the White Cliffs of Dover were some of the giants of the dinosaur age.
The hind leg, yeah, and that would have been where the forepaw went.
There is no doubting their dedication to their hobby. Here in all weathers, 2 amateur fossil hunters have made a find which has turned the British paleontology world upside down. The faint outline of dinosaur tracks, frozen in time, in a stratum where previously it was thought impossible for them to have walked.
It's an internationally important find because it's rewriting the history and the geological history, the paleoecology of this area at the time.
Folkestone would have been reminiscent of a scene from Jurassic Park 100 million years ago, only this was the Cretaceous period. Here conditions were just right for some of the dinosaur footprints to become fossilised. Their discovery proves this rock layer was in a tidal area, not deep undersea as previously thought. Philip Hadland found the first footprint with Steve's help. They've now found dozens here.
I just got my eye in gradually, and that's exactly what Steve did as well. Steve has really got his eye in, and Steve finds new footprints all the time.
You've got the middle toe here.
As we filmed, he found another one, just about visible with a bit of imagination.
And it comes round in a curve here.
One of the clearer ones is now in the local museum, a 3-toe footprint from when Folkestone looked rather different.
It would have been a very busy place. No ice cream vans, no deck chairs, but lots and lots of dinosaurs. But these are the trace of our last dinosaurs that were walking in Britain.
That something as ephemeral as a footprint survived 100 million years is quite remarkable. That it was found where no one thought it could be shows just how much we still have to discover. Dan Rivers, News at 10, Folkestone.
Was it raining 100 million years ago in the summer? That's the question. Good night. See you tomorrow.